The screen is dark. A panicked, crying voice tells his captors that he doesn't remember. A steely voice says to kill him. And then we cut to Jin Seok, waking up in the back seat of his family's car. He's covered in sweat and looks confused, but ultimately fine. His mother's there. She asks if he's alright. His dad laughs and tells him that he was having a nightmare. His brother, Yoo Seok, chuckles and thinks that Jin Seok was too excited about them moving into a new house today to sleep. Jin Seok smiles along, but something seems off. The family arrives at their new house, and Jin Seok says that he has a familiar feeling about it. But ultimately, he's excited for their move. He stands beside his older brother, and for a moment, Jin Seok pontificates on how much he admires him. Yoo Seok is not only smart, he's kind and caring and good at sports, but he never has anything bad to say about anyone. And he's the envy of all the other boys in school. Jin Seok thinks the world of his brother, and it's easy to see why. And even though the previous year saw Yoo Seok get into a car crash and injure his leg, he's still perfect in the eyes of his brother. As the family start to unpack, we see that the year is 1997. Upstairs, Jin Seok learns that he'll be sharing a room with his brother. Turns out that the house's previous owner left some things behind in the smallest room, but asked if he could come back in a month to collect them. Jin Seok's father said of course, which means that now there's only the one room for Jin Seok and his brother to share. Yoo Seok jokes that Jin Seok doesn't want to share a room with him, but Jin Seok says that he doesn't mind. He does love his brother after all. That night at dinner, Jin Seok asks his father about the spare room. His father tells him that it'll be cleaned out in a month, and for now the two brothers are going to have to be patient. He also warns Jin Seok not to go into the room no matter what. This catches Jin Seok's attention, and as he looks up to where the room is, he hears a thud on the floor. No one else heard it, but when he pushes them all, they guess that maybe it was just thunder. A few moments later, more thunder rumbles, confirming their theory, but Jin Seok doesn't look so sure. While having dinner, Jin Seok's parents remind him to continue taking his medication. Jin Seok nods and agrees. Jin Seok's in bed, listening to music in his Discman. Beside him, Yoo Seok is fast asleep. As he listens to the music, he hears a noise coming from the small room. Despite himself, Jin Seok has to go and investigate. He creeps closer, hearing a rustling sound beyond the door. The sound seems to increase. He reaches the door, slowly moves his hand for the handle when Yoo Seok taps him on the shoulder. Cinema recap here. We've got a little challenge that'll take 5 seconds, and it will change your life forever. You ready? All you gotta do is like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, and you'll receive 10 free years of good luck. It's as simple as that. Jin Seok just about jumps through the roof, but then hurriedly explains to his brother about the noise. His brother listens, hears nothing, and then drags Jin Seok outside for a walk to clear his head. It's pouring rain, so the two brothers take umbrellas. They stand outside and look over the city. Yoo Seok suddenly gets a call from their father, asking him to come back home for a moment. Yoo Seok agrees but confirms that Jin Seok will wait for him. Jin Seok says he will. As Jin Seok waits, Yoo Seok is attacked outside the house by a group of men in a van. Jin Seok, getting bored, starts to wander home and manages to get there just in time to see his brother abducted by these men. He gives chase but is unable to stop him. He does, however, memorize the number plate, then somehow stumbles back inside and tells his parents that Yoo Seok was kidnapped before passing out cold. While passed out, Jin Seok has more bizarre dreams. There's blood, an axe swinging at his head, rain. Someone says, "Kill him," and then he wakes up. When Jin Seok eventually wakes, he's taken downstairs to speak to the detectives. He tells them that he saw the men taking his brother. He then tells them about the license plate, the one on the black van that his brother was forced into. The detectives claim that this license plate doesn't exist, and neither does the van. Jin Seok becomes irate, insisting that he saw it, but neither the two detectives believe him. They assume he imagined the numbers or misread them. The days become hard for Jin Seok and his parents. He tries to study and continues to take his medication, but he's anxious and scared for his brother. Every night, Jin Seok dreams of a man who he doesn't recognize, but one that keeps visiting him. One night, Jin Seok is fast asleep, only to wake suddenly. He looks across the room and sees that the door to the small room is open. What's more, someone inside the room is slowly pushing the door further and further open. He watches for a moment as the door opens, and then he ducks under the covers, terrified of whoever's in the room. A dark figure approaches and walks inside the room. Jin Seok hides, terrified, waiting for the end. But when it doesn't come, he sneaks a peek and sees that his room is empty and the door was closed. Something, a demon woman of some kind, attacks Jin Seok. He screams and then wakes up. 19 days have passed and Yoo Seok returns home. He claims to have amnesia, with zero recollection of what happened or where he's been for the past 19 days. A psychiatrist explains that this is normal, just a result of extreme trauma, and that the memories will return soon enough. All they can do is wait. Jin Seok wakes in the middle of the night to find his brother is gone. He hears him leaving through the front gate but thinks nothing of it. He's relieved the next morning to wake and find him returned. Jin Seok goes to take his medication, only for him to drop it under the counter. When he bends down to retrieve it, Yoo Seok distracts him. They order takeaway food and eat together. As they eat, Jin Seok asks his brother where he went the previous night, and Yoo Seok claims he went nowhere, that Jin Seok was just having a dream. Yoo Seok then stands to go to class, and Jin Seok notices that he's limping on the wrong leg. Yoo Seok dismisses the claim, pretending that Jin Seok is seeing things. Jin Seok seems to believe him and then goes back to eating. Jin Seok is fast at studying, until he isn't. He falls asleep at the desk, head on the table. Yoo Seok stands over his shoulders, watching his brother sleep. He then picks up a click top pencil and starts to click the lead out further and further, aiming it toward his brother's closed eyelid. It gets within a millimeter of piercing the eye before dropping out the end of the pen. When it does, Yoo Seok puts the pen down and leaves the house. Jin Seok opens his eyes, having been awake the whole time. He sees Yoo Seok leave the house, so he follows him, shocked when he notices that Yoo Seok is no longer limping. But things only get stranger from there. He follows Yoo Seok through the town, further and further until he comes to a quiet part of the city. There, the two detectives from earlier address him as boss, and the three of them speak as if they're scheming something together, something to do with Jin Seok. Confused, terrified, Jin Seok returns to leave when he bumps into the two detectives. They call him an asshole and tell him that he's ruining everything before suddenly chasing him. Jin Seok flees and it looks like he's going to lose him, only for his brother to suddenly appear behind him and put a cloth to his mouth, making him pass out. Jin Seok wakes the next morning to find himself back in his room, at the table where he passed out. He freaks out when Yoo Seok appears and he rushes into the bathroom and locks himself in. There, he screams at Yoo Seok that he remembers what happened the previous night and demands that Yoo Seok tell him the truth. Yoo Seok says that he's telling him the truth and Jin Seok must have dreamt it. Jin Seok won't listen and the two brothers start to fight violently. It only ends with Yoo Seok reminding Jin Seok that he didn't take his medication the previous day, and that's why the dreams were so vivid. Jin Seok looks confused, upset, angry at the whole thing, but he eventually relents and believes what his brother's telling him. His brother sits Jin Seok down and forces him to take his medication. He then leaves the house. With his brother gone, Jin Seok sits down to study, but then he finds the lead from the pencil that Yoo Seok pushed out the previous night, proving that Jin Seok wasn't imagining it. His mother returns, and Jin Seok tells her everything that happened. She looks terrified, wondering if something's wrong with Yoo Seok. Jin Seok says that whoever that man is, it isn't his brother. In his room, Jin Seok again hears a noise coming from the small room. He picks up a baseball bat and stalks toward it, finally opens the door. Inside, everything appears normal. It's full of furniture, all packed up and ready to be collected. But then Jin Seok rounds the corner and finds his brother hanging from the neck, dead. Jin Seok wakes up in bed. Again, it was all a dream. He wanders downstairs where he hears his mother on the phone in her room. He sneaks to the door and overhears the conversation. She's on the phone to Yoo Seok, telling him everything that Jin Seok told her earlier. It's clear that Jin Seok was correct and something's going on. As he listens, he accidentally makes a noise and his mother hears. She hurries to the door and throws it open, but Jin Seok's gone. His mother stalks through the house, making sure that Jin Seok didn't overhear her. Jin Seok hides outside, but when he realizes that she's going upstairs to make sure he's asleep, he has to climb the side of the house and beat her to his room. It's raining outside, slippery, and the window's locked. Jin Seok hangs off the side of the house as he hurries to try and climb in. Meanwhile, his mother's getting closer and closer to his room. Somehow, he manages to get in before her, and she pulls back the covers to see her son asleep. He's soaking wet from the rain, but she mistakes it as sweat and leaves him to go back to sleep. The moment she's gone, Jin Seok is up. He climbs back out the window as a means to escape. Inside, his mother's still on the phone, explaining that her cover has been blown, that Jin Seok overheard her. Back outside, Jin Seok is about to flee from the house when his father appears. His mother then comes outside and a random man approaches and stands beside her. They ask Jin Seok to come back inside, but he runs for his life. The random man chases him through the street, and it looks like he's going to catch Jin Seok too, only for a motorbike rider to get in the way, giving Jin Seok enough time to hail down a police car. Finally, he's saved. Inside the police station, Jin Seok tries to explain what's going on, but even he doesn't understand it. Things become stranger when they confirm his identity to be true, but then tell him it's 2017 and he is, in fact, 40 years old. Jin Seok freaks out and looks around the station to see that it's indeed true. And then he sees a mirror, his reflection for the first time. Jin Seok isn't the 20-year-old he thought he was. He's a middle-aged man. He goes home to find the place empty. He stalks upstairs to the spare room, and when he goes in, things become even stranger still. There's fake blood everywhere, as well as two dummies covered in blood, making the place look like a crime scene. Yoo Seok and his parents arrive. Jin Seok demands to know what's going on, and finally, they explain everything. 20 years ago, a murder took place in this house, in the small room. It was a brutal murder that captured the attention of the nation. Unfortunately, the police were never able to find out who the murderer was. After 16 years, the family hired Yoo Seok as a private investigator. He was able to track down Jin Seok, who he claims to be the murderer. The problem was that Jin Seok can't remember doing it. It's like the memories have been erased. In a desperate attempt to try and make Jin Seok remember, they brainwash him. The plan is to convince Jin Seok that it's 1997 and that he's moving into the murder house with his family, Yoo Seok and his two parents. The night they moved in, they intended on reenacting the murder, hoping that this would unlock the memory within Jin Seok. But that night, Yoo Seok was arrested for unrelated reasons, and Jin Seok saw it. The plan had to change. As they drive Jin Seok to the police station, Yoo Seok tries a final time to get him to remember what he did and why. Jin Seok claims that he never killed anyone, and then, before they get a chance to push him further, he jumps out of the moving car and flees. They give chase, hurriedly trying to catch the fleeing Jin Seok as he runs through traffic. In the confusion, Yoo Seok crashes the car, killing the mother and father and injuring himself. It looks like Jin Seok's about to get away, only for a random car to hit him and knock him out. Now, finally, Jin Seok remembers everything. As a 20-year-old, he rides in the back of the car with his brother and parents. It's the same scene from the start of the movie, only this time the car crashes and severely injures his brother and kills his parents. Alone now, Jin Seok is desperate for money. The surgery on his brother has to happen as soon as possible if there's any chance to save him, but the cost is too much for Jin Seok to afford. He tries to find a job, but he has no education, and no one's willing to hire him. Then, one night while surfing the internet looking for a job, a random user asks if it's true that he'll do anything for the money he needs. Jin Seok says that he will, so the random user asks Jin Seok to kill a woman for him. The user was specific that only the woman be killed, and that her kids be left alone. Jin Seok sneaks into her house, the very same one he's been living in, and finds the woman in her bedroom. But he's unable to do it, and he's about to leave him be when she wakes up and sees Jin Seok in her house. He asks her not to scream, tells her that he's going to leave. Then the daughter comes downstairs and starts to scream. In a panic, Jin Seok chases after her and accidentally kills her. The mother then comes in, still screaming, and he accidentally kills her too. The only person he doesn't kill is the infant son, who Jin Seok tells to go into his room and count from 1 to 100 10 times. If he does that, he'll bring his mother and sister back to him. The boy runs into his room to do just that, and Jin Seok leaves. It was Jin Seok's brother's doctor that hired him to kill his wife. Jin Seok confronts him on a roof, asks how he could have hired someone to do such a terrible thing. The doctor explains it was for the insurance money, as his family would be on the street without it. Jin Seok still can't believe he wanted such a thing, and soon the two men fight. It's a struggle, which ends when Jin Seok accidentally throws the doctor off the roof and kills him. Distraught, Jin Seok flees. It's present day, and Jin Seok wakes up in a hospital. His fake brother's there, furious that once again Jin Seok managed to escape. But not this time. He pulls out a needle filled with poison and is about to inject Jin Seok when he finally admits that he remembers what happened. His fake brother reveals he was the little boy Jin Seok let live all those years ago, and that his life was ruined because of Jin Seok. Apparently, his relatives took the money from the insurance and then shipped him off to an orphanage. He wants to know if his father hired Jin Seok to kill his mother, as that is what he's always suspected. But Jin Seok lies and tells him that he did it on his own. He then wants to know why Jin Seok didn't kill him too, why he let him live in such a horrible world. Distraught now, the fake brother commits suicide by throwing himself out the window. Jin Seok, unable to handle all the pain he's caused, uses the needle to commit suicide. A final flashback reveals that on the day Jin Seok's family was in that accident, he met the fake brother as a child, not knowing at the time the way he would affect his life forever. This was a recap of Forgotten, released by Kiwi Company in 2017. It was directed by Jang Hang-joon and stars Kang Ha-neul, Kim Moo-yo, and Moon Sung-kyun. Were you surprised by the twist, or did you see it coming? And if you did, when? Let me know with the hashtag Cinema Recap in the comments.